Hi everyone. I hope you're doing okay. It's nearly the weekend. I'm sorry, so we're hanging there. It's so cool to see all of you here, like out of anywhere, like Lisbon. It's really pretty cool. So I'm here to tell you about UX as a strategy. I've been in the game industry for the past 15 years. For those who don't know me, I have a PhD in psychology. I worked at Ubisoft in France. I'm French. Then Ubisoft Montreal, then LucasArts in San Francisco, then Epic Games in North Carolina. And for the past 7 years, I've been working as a consultant, as a game UX strategist consultant. So it's been 7 years, and I've been repeating pretty much a lot of the same spiel for 7 years. And so this is what we're gonna see today, talk about UX strategy. So when I started the game industry, UX was really not a thing. And then it started in the 2010s. We started to talk about UX and how wonderful it is and how it's gonna help you with your games. But a lot of people are like, what is that? I don't want to touch any of it. So we did do a lot of move forward quite a bit. So today we do talk a lot about UX, but it's a little bit like UX/UI, UI/UX designers, and we're very confused about what UX is about. But we do talk about it. So I think, yay, it's progress, but it's still not totally entirely there. And there's a lot of focus on UI, where UX is actually about everything. So it's a little bit worn out picture to talk about UX. I know, but still like it. So when we talk about UX, it's all about making to distinguish between the intentions that we have with our design, with our art, with the things we want to accomplish, and what people actually do with it. And the idea is that, yes, there are some people that will take the nice path, yes, and this is also their user experience. But we have to take into account that there are many of our players who will not use the path that we thought would be the greatest path for them, because they have different will, or they have a different perception of what your game is about. And this is about understanding that from the very beginning of production, not once it's shipped and you're like, oh no, fuck, what do we do? Let's put a nice patch and hope that people just gonna go back in the right way, and they don't, because this is not working. You can always patch little things here and there, but if you really want to offer the best user experience to players, and especially the one that you were hoping for them, and make them feel the emotions and go through the journey that you want them to have, we have to think about UX really from the beginning as a strategy. And so this is what I'm here to talk to you about. So UX is not just the UI, it's not just the concern of some of the people with UX in their titles. It's really a mindset. And it's a mindset about considering human factors. Like, you're making a game for other humans, and those humans are not you. And there's a lot of things that are happening, and you want to make sure that they have the experience that you want for them, and that this experience is the best possible. And so it's about having that mindset, understanding that these are humans. Humans have great capabilities, but also great limitations. And we need to take account this all throughout the development process and ever after we ship. And we still need to make sure that people are still having fun. And so it is a strategy. And it is a strategy that should concern everyone at the studio. So yes, UX folks, designers, artists, engineers, producers, QA folks, trust and safety, marketing, community managers, everyone, you're all like participating into shaping the game into something that people are going to experience. So you all should understand a little bit what that means, so that we can all go in the right direction and make the right calls at the right moment. And so just a little show of hands. How many of you here work in UX, like are UX professionals? Okay, not too many. Awesome. Awesome, because I want to reach out to the others who are not into UX. Okay, cool. So what does that mean to have a strategy? Well, it starts, and I know it seems silly, but it starts by defining who are the users and what experience you want to offer. Outside of the game industry, when it's not about an art form or not about entertainment, we start with the users. We go out and, well, I'm going to say we, like UX professionals, and they try to find out, let's say you want to help people, I don't know, make it easier for them to file their taxes or to increase, I don't know, improve the experience when you go to the grocery store and shopping. So you go there and you look at what's going on, who are the people going through that service or using a product, what are their problems? So we don't just think, oh, they should have this problem because I have this problem. No, we go there and we ask and we look and we do like the field research to find that out. And then we identify those problems and then we try to find ways to solve for these problems. So it's really a problem-solving approach. So usually outside of the game industry, start with users. In the game industry, it's a bit different. It's an art form. We want to offer a specific experience, and we think it can come from different places and different ways for us to create those games. But it could be like, hey, what if we add a building mechanic to a third-person shooter game with RPG mechanics? How would that look? And you try it out and try to see if it's fun, and then we iterate, and then, oh yeah, it should be fun. And then we define, okay, this is the game we're making, and this is the experience that we want to offer. Who are the players who will be interested into playing that game? So it's not necessarily the same order inside games and outside, but still, we need to define the experience. Where are we going to challenge players? And more importantly, where are we not going to challenge players? If you make players have to remember a bunch of stuff in the game, know that you're going to challenge their memory. Is this where you want to challenge players? And I ask this question all the time when I work with studios, because sometimes things are a bit complex in the game, and it's like, okay, by doing this, you're challenging your players for their attention or for their memory. Is this where you want to challenge them? Or sometimes it's difficult to find a weapon and to grab the weapon and to destroy zombies. You're challenging players' perception. It's like, where's Waldo? Where's Charlie? Is this where you want to challenge players? And a lot of times it's like, well, not really. All right, so maybe we need to rethink that so you can focus on where you want to challenge players. It's really a question that we ask often because making a game is making choices. And there are so many things that you can do in the game, but every time you add a feature, add a mechanic, or add a system, it's challenging your players in a certain way. Ask yourself, this is what your game is about? And also know your players. Where do they come from? What do they know already about the game you're making? Are they playing another game that has that system that you have in your game, so that you can anticipate a little bit what they're familiar with and what they're not familiar with, so that you can focus on what they're not familiar with to build your onboarding around this, instead of building the onboarding on the things that are easy to teach to players, even though they should already know that. So a lot of questions that we're going to ask all throughout the development process revolves around understanding exactly what experience we want to offer and to whom. So I know it sounds silly, like Captain Obvious kind of thing, but it's really something that we constantly have to ask ourselves, because it's easy to move away from the direction that we're setting up for ourselves from the beginning. So always asking ourselves, when you add a feature or add a system, add a mechanic, why? Why does that matter for players? Also, who are our players? How is this gonna enrich the experience for those players? And then how are we gonna do this? What are the functionalities that we're gonna add, whether it's a system or mechanic? And then what is gonna look like for players? So that once this is implemented, the form, as players interact with it, do they get to why is it cool? So is that the little back and forth that we do. I'm going to go through very quickly a lot of things just to show you how rich the UX strategy is about. And so when we ask ourselves this, we need to focus on the intrinsic motivation for players. So I'm not going to tell you here about motivation and player motivation as well. It's a different talk. But we care about competence, autonomy, relatedness, the sense of progression for players, their self-expression, and how they can play with others, their cooperation and competition. This is really the core of what we want to make them feel before we think about all the rewards we're going to put on top of that. Rewards are really important. It's extrinsic motivation, but it needs to serve intrinsic motivation and also serve the goals for players in such a way that those rewards are going to be meaningful to them. So some of the things that I look into a lot when I work with a team is what are the short-term, medium-term, and long-term goals for your players? And no, it's not just like players going to want to keep playing because if they do, they're going to level up. That's not enough. Yes, it's exciting to level up because why? Why do they want to level up? Why do they want to have a new weapon? Why do they want to upgrade their stuff? Because they want to reach a certain medium-term goal so that they can go further into the end game or the longer-term goal. This is what's going to make players want to keep playing, not just leveling up. And so these are the questions that we need to ask ourselves. I know I'm going very quickly, but hopefully you there we can you can feel free to ask me questions after the talk is over about these things. So we start by defining the experience and the players. And then it's really important as a strategy to shift our perspective because the human brain is biased, and we need to understand that we're making a game for players, and we think they're gonna players are gonna understand it the way we intended it. But this is not what happens, because if you've been to some of my presentations, well, perception is subjective, attention resources are scarce, and memory is fallible in humans. These are the main mental processes that we use to understand the environment. Like right now, like you're processing this presentation, your perception is not mine because we're all a bit different. That's coming from our culture, our prior knowledge. So if you've been to my presentation before, there are things that you're going to understand certain things differently than if the first time that you see me upstage. Our attention resources are scarce, we're really not good at multitasking, and we don't memorize things really accurately. So that's going to be the reality for your players, and even for you, it's going to be very weird to realize that they're not understanding the game as you thought they would. They don't remember something that happened just 5 minutes ago, and you don't understand why, and they're not paying attention to that thing that's flashing, and you don't understand why they can't pay attention to it because, oh my God, it's obvious. So we need to shift that perspective that things are going to be okay. Yes, it's going to be obvious because you think it's obvious because you know your game too well. And so we need to understand that the brain of your players has limitations. And it's heavily biased, and you need to have an understanding of that and to anticipate this because it is going to happen. And if you don't anticipate that, you're just going to be very surprised. And if you don't play test your game enough, you're going to be surprised at beta or right before lunch when it's too late to do anything to correct this. And so it's really important to get ready for it. I know it's not pleasant, but the more we're ready for it early, the better we can actually address it cheaply. So the gamer's brain has limitations and is biased. And so is yours. And so that's also the thing that we need to keep in mind, is like understanding all of those limitations and understanding human factors, psychology and engineering. It's not just useful facing our players, it's also useful for our own process, because we're going to make decisions based on our biased perception with a limited attention and memory. And so we also need to understand that so we can have a better and more efficient process within ourselves as we're working together to make a game. And so one of the things we have to keep in mind is all these biases that we have, and there are lots of them. Don't read them, it's going to depress you. But this is what's happening. And it's okay to have them. And I know a lot of people don't want to face that, and we're going to reject it because it's really painful. But we should actually be okay with them. And be okay doesn't mean like, well, I'm biased and so be it. No, it's like, okay, we're all biased. We going to anticipate that this is going to happen. And so we're going to think about our process so that we can anticipate this and make sure we make the right decisions. We have a tendency to jump to conclusions. Like, we need to go fast, like we're very busy people and the world is stressful out there, especially lately. And so we make decisions very quickly, and so, you know, players are going to do that. But the problem is that their brain is interpreting a lot of things very quickly that are not true at all. And there's no way for us to know what is true, what is not true until we see the truth for what it is. And then once we see the truth, say, oh yeah, I knew it all along. That's called the hindsight bias. So we have all these biases, and it's much, much harder to understand what's going on at the moment it is going on. And so this is what UX is about. It's about understanding that you have the curse of knowledge. You know your game too well. So that's why you need to play test to figure out what players really are experiencing, and not just guess what they're going to experience. Also understand that you have the egocentric bias. We all have it. We all think that because, oh yeah, my kid did it and they found it great. Well, guess what? It's not because your kid understood it and loved it. It's going to be the same for everyone. It's really difficult to get out of this one. Of course, we have the confirmation bias. I hope you're familiar with this one. We have a tendency to seek out things that are going to just reinforce our preconceptions. We also have the self-fulfilling prophecy. If we think that, oh yeah, this audience is not going to need, I don't know, that feature, so we're not going to implement it, and so we just keep going, and then we ask players, oh, would you like to have that feature? Like, no, yeah, well, okay, so we did the right thing in not implementing that feature, except that it's only the players who don't care about that feature who are playing your game, because you did not provide that feature for the others, and so they're gone. So this is what's called a self-fulfilling prophecy. We also have the survivorship bias. A little bit of it's close in the idea is like, if you're sending a survey to your beta players and asking them a bunch of stuff, and then you look at the surveys, they're like, okay, they like this, they like that, and then we can like cater the game to answer to this. Except that the players who stop playing your game because they really didn't like it are not going to answer your survey. And this is something that it's really important to keep in mind, because sometimes there's something you can solve that no one is talking about because they don't care about your game anymore because they're not around. Most players who answer surveys are the most engaged. And so it's really difficult to go around this one to try to figure out exactly what we can do to really have a bump in the quality of the game and to cater to more people, because it's hard for us to find the people who disengaged. So there's all these biases, and it's really, really difficult. But this is why UX is heavily rooted in cognitive science, not in opinions. And this is why we use a scientific method, so that we can find out exactly what's going on, that we can understand all the biases that I mentioned earlier, so that in our methodology to find out what are the problems, we take those biases into account. We're not solving for everything. Scientists are also humans and biased, so we always have to keep in mind that. But this is really helping us prevent like the biggest caveats. So this is going to help us identify the correct issues to solve and how to efficiently solve them despite our biases. And correct issues is really the emphasis here. Finding problems to solve is not the most difficult part. It's finding the right problems to solve so that we don't, put a lot of effort and money, budget, and time and stress into solving the thing that is actually not really what's important. Then we need to establish a common language. So in UX, we don't have a very strong common language in game UX. So this is all sort of things I also work a lot with the team so that we can identify, name the things so it's easier to identify them and solve for them in terms of usability and engageability. Also, what we need to do in the game industry is not really great right now, is to understand and establish the UX roles, because we use all these terms like UX designers, UX researchers, data analysts, and UX strategists, or director of UX, but it's not super clear. UX designers are often expected to do visual design. This is not their job. Some of them like it and might do it, but this is not what they should be doing. It's really important also that to understand that UX designers are here to make things functional for players, to figure out how to do certain things and make sure our players can do it and it's going to be fun for them. So they work very closely with the game designers, but they're trained in human factor psychology because they understand all these problems that we mentioned, and in their design they have to iterate to figure stuff out. So we need a better understanding of these roles, and also again, like for director of UX. There's a lot of director of UX in the game industry who don't necessarily have training in human factors. You don't need a PhD to do that. I'm not saying this, but you do need to be trained into all, these limitations, brain limitations, and biases, because this is what this is about: is to understand and anticipate all these problems. So we need to get better at it. And the last step is better process. So this is also something that we're not great at yet in the game industry. So in UX we talk about the design thinking process, which starts by identifying the problem again for the users, defining that problem, ideate, prototype, and we test, and we do that all the time. And then we implement, and then we test again to see how that works. And we don't always have the time to do that a lot in games, and it's a fallacy to think that, well, we don't have the time to do it, so hey, let's implement and just like run. But it's actually going to save you time down the line. So that's why producers are really important in UX, because it's really important to give yourself that time to try, fail early when it's cheap, so that you can correct very quickly, and then your game is only going to be better, and you're going to be able to do that faster at a cheaper price. And establish a good pipeline when you test. Like, start with hypotheses. So I don't have the time to explain all this process that we did in Fortnite, but we always started with an hypothesis, working with the team. Like, the team is like, they implement a new system. Okay, what are the hypotheses? Like, what is this system for? Why is this going to be cool for players? And based on these hypotheses, we plan the test, and we sure we have the right build so that we can test, that can report on the test, create some tasks, triage, verify, etc., and move on with that process. Again, it takes some time to put this together, and it requires teams to understand all that and have a common language and all that. But once this is going on, this is when we can be much, much faster doing everything. So this is what a strategy could look like. Again, UX is very young in the game industry. We can think of other steps, but these are the 4 main steps that I was thinking about: alignment on what experience you want to offer, to whom, shift in perspective, how to establish a common language, and defining a process. Because again, UX is a mindset with 4 pillars. It's human-centered, grounded in science, it's collaborative process, and it's benevolent. We're here to improve people's lives with technology and games in our case. So it's also very important to keep that in mind, because ethics, accessibility, inclusion, and protecting players is really important and central in what we do. It's not just about business, it's about having a win-win situation. Yes, the business is going to be thriving, but because players are having fun and they are respected. So it's incompatible with the use of dark patterns. If you're interested in that, you can take a look at ethicalgames.org. This is the initiative that I started with a few folks, and we're trying to think of a code of ethics for the game industry right now, to counter all the lawsuits and fines that are happening right now, and be proactive and be more respectful of players, but also of workers in the game industry. All right, I'm going to skip this part because I am late, of course. So it's more about ethics. So it has to be intentional. And that's about it. So think about where are you at your studio in terms of maturity, UX maturity. Most studios are around 3. You know, like playtest is happening, but there's not really a process around it. At best, you know, a few studios are level 4. I like this maturity model because it's easy to talk about it. It's not necessarily the most granular, but it's easy to try to have a grasp of where you're at and what you need to do to move forward so that you can have all great things that we talk about so that you can make great games faster and more efficiently. All right, just a few resources here around UX if you need them. And yeah, UX, fuck yeah, let's do this. Thank you so much for your attention. I'm sure we don't have time for questions, right?
Amazing, thank you so much. We do actually have time for a couple of questions.
Because it was like 0. It's like, oh no. Okay. Any questions? Yeah.
Everyone's busy taking photos.
Hello.
And feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn or Blue Sky, and I'll be there to answer questions also.
All right. Thank you very much. Very, very interesting. I've also been following you a bit in a benevolent way.
Oh, awesome.
My question is more curious. There is this approach in environmental architecture, I'm sure there's a name for it, where you design the park, but you don't pave the roads, and you give it a few months, and then you see where the roads are formed, and then you apply the side. Are there any examples of that in digital?
Well, yes and no, because it cannot be that granular. Not granular. What's the term I'm looking for? It cannot be as natural as you described it, because we need to implement certain things in digital. But you know, this is what the beta, or even like Fortnite, for example, like for nearly 2 years was in alpha. That's a little bit of the idea. Actually, just like let the players play and see what's going on. We do also that for onboarding. You can, once you have a good prototype and players can understand what's going on, you can just let them play and not give them any instructions, so you can see what is already easy to understand and what is complicated, so that you can set up your plan based off of that. But to get back to the Fortnite example, there was a lot of things that were not, finished, and we're just like prototyping on a lot of things. But just by doing all these online tests, we can actually see what is working well, what needs to be worked on. So it's not exactly as natural as you're mentioning, but it's a little bit of the idea to let some things a little bit unfinished, see what's going on, what needs more work, and what is already working well, so that you can decide we need to fix the problems or double down on the things that are already seem to be super fun for players. So it's...
Oh, that makes sense. All right, thanks.